Amaka, please come home now. Mama Sandra's voice echoed through the phone, laced with panic. Something is wrong with Adana. She won't wake up. Amaka froze. Her fingers trembled as her phone slipped from her grip, crashing to the marble floor. The sound felt distant, almost surreal. Her heart pounded. Everything else, her meeting, the work files, the assistant waiting by her office door, faded into silence. Only one thought echoed in her head. Adana. She didn't even wait to explain. She grabbed her bag, burst out of the office like a madwoman, and dialed her husband on the way out. "Jonathan, it's Adana. She's not responding. Something is wrong." By the time they both arrived at the house, the nanny, Mama Sandra, was pacing the living room, tears flowing down her cheeks. "I fed her as usual. She just slept off, but I can't wake her," she wailed, wringing her hands. Amaka didn't speak. Her eyes locked on the tiny, lifeless form on the baby cot. Her baby. Her miracle. The child she had named after the mother she lost in pain. The name that was meant to live on. Adana. Amaka scooped the child into her arms, tears rushing down her cheeks. "Adana," she cried. "Wake up, baby, please, wake up." But the tiny body was still. Too still. Jonathan took control. "We need to get to the hospital. Now." They raced against time. But time had already made its decision. In the sterile white room of the hospital, the doctor's voice came like a dagger. I'm very sorry. There's nothing we could do. She was gone before you arrived." Amaka's wail echoed so loud that nurses outside the emergency ward turned away. The pain tore through her chest like an explosion. Her knees buckled beneath her as she screamed into the air. No, no, God, not again. The loss of her son, Billionaire, had nearly killed her. But Adana, this one was different. This baby was her second chance at healing, her fresh start. And now, gone. The doctor hesitated before delivering the final blow. "There's something else. We found poison in her bloodstream." Everything in the room stopped. Jonathan's eyes narrowed. "Poison?" The doctor nodded grimly. "Yes, something was administered. We'll need to report this." Amaka turned to Mama Sandra, whose face was wet with tears. "You fed her last. What happened?" "I swear I didn't do anything," she sobbed. "I just gave her the food, like I always do. I didn't know." But Jonathan wasn't a man to take chances. He had installed a discreet CCTV camera in the house months ago, especially after Adana was born. It wasn't distrust, it was protection. As arrangements for Adana's burial began, Jonathan locked himself in his home office. He pored over the footage. Hours went by. Then he found it. The date, the hour, the moment. It showed Mama Sandra in the kitchen, preparing Adana's food. Moments later, the front door creaked open. A woman entered, her head wrapped in a scarf, oversized glasses on her face. She handed Mama Sandra a small container, whispering. Sandra nodded, took the item, and dropped something into the baby's feeding bottle. The stranger turned slightly, her face catching the corner of the camera. Jonathan paused the footage, zoomed in, and froze. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. He slammed his fist on the table and ran to Amaka. "Amaka, come, now! Look at this!" She leaned over the laptop screen. As the footage played, her breath caught in her throat. Then, the camera revealed the woman's side profile. It was her, the very woman Amaka thought was gone from this world. Amaka staggered backward. "No, that's not possible." Her voice trembled. Her hands flew to her mouth. That's Amara." "My stepmother." Jonathan nodded solemnly. "She faked her death." Amaka collapsed into the sofa. "I never attended her burial, neither did Dad. He thought she was gone." They stared at the screen. The horror was real. The woman who once sold her to a stranger, the same woman she saved and paid all the expenses for her surgery, had come back to kill her child. But she didn't work alone. The nanny, the woman who had cried alongside her just hours ago, was part of it. Jonathan immediately alerted the police. Within hours, a warrant was issued. Mama Sandra was arrested the next morning. She confessed under pressure. She said it was revenge. That Amaka needed to suffer, she mumbled. She said Adana's name was a curse to her, that the child shouldn't exist. Amara, who had been hiding in a nearby village under a false name, was also arrested in a swift, quiet operation. She was shocked when the police surrounded her small room. Her evil plan had failed. Her disguise was broken. The courtroom was filled on the day of the trial. Press, NGOs, and women's rights activists were all there. Though shattered by grief, stood strong. Her testimony shook the courtroom. "I did not come here for revenge," she said firmly. "I came for justice, for my daughter Adana, the name of my mother that you, Amara, once tried to erase." Amara sat behind the bars, face devoid of expression. Her wickedness had caught up with her. The judge's gavel came down. "You are both hereby sentenced to life imprisonment." Mama Sandra, the nanny who helped Amaka's stepmother achieve her evil, was sentenced together with her to spend the rest of their lives in jail, behind bars of a maximum security prison. Gasps filled the courtroom. Amaka's eyes shut tightly. She had lost another child. But this time, she had fought back, and won. Her father, Mr. Andrews, stood behind her every step of the way, tears in his eyes. He held her as the verdict was read. "You did it, my daughter," he whispered. "You stopped her." But Amaka only shook her head. "I didn't win, Dad. I lost Adana." He held her tighter. She didn't die in vain. Weeks passed, but the pain refused to ease. Some nights, Amaka couldn't sleep. She'd sit at Adana's grave, whispering stories to them, clutching the small teddy bear her daughter used to hold. But she never let the pain break her, not completely. Then, one morning, she found herself staring at the mirror. Her face was pale, her hair tied in a loose bun. She turned to Jonathan and whispered, "I want to try again." He nodded silently. 1 year later, inside the same hospital where she had lost her baby, the world gave her twins, a boy and a girl, healthy, screaming, and full of life. She held them close, kissed their foreheads, and whispered through happy tears, "Adana, Adaza, you are my light." But as joy returned to their lives, a knock would soon come, one that could change everything again. It was a quiet Saturday morning. The sunlight filtered softly through the bedroom curtains. Amaka lay on the bed, her newborn twins, Adana and Adaza, peacefully napping beside her. Their soft breaths were a lullaby of hope. The nursery down the hall was already painted in pastel colors, with names written on the wall in golden calligraphy. For the first time in years, Amaka felt safe, loved, and whole. Jonathan tiptoed in with a tray of pap and fried plant. "Mama, twins," he whispered playfully, planting a gentle kiss on her cheek. Amaka smiled for the first time in a long while. It wasn't forced, it was real. "Do you know how long it's been since I ate without tears in my throat?" she asked softly. Jonathan didn't answer. He just held her hand and looked into her eyes. "We've come far, Amaka. You fought for every bit of this joy." Just then, the doorbell rang. Amaka frowned slightly. "We're not expecting anyone." Jonathan gently set the tray aside. Maybe it's the security guy. But when he opened the door, his expression changed. "Who is it?" Amaka called from the room. Jonathan hesitated. "Amaka, you need to come." Worried, Amaka carried Adaza and stepped into the living room. Standing at the doorway was a young girl. She looked about 17. She was thin, her hair braided tightly to her scalp. She wore a faded Ankara wrapper and a threadbare blouse. Her eyes were sunken from tears and hunger. The girl looked at Amaka, her lips trembling. "My name is Chica," she said. "I need help. I was told you help girls like me." Amaka exchanged a glance with Jonathan. She stepped closer. "Chica? Who told you about me?" The girl broke down in tears, collapsing to her knees. "Please forgive me for coming here uninvited. I ran away from the people that kept me locked in a house in the city. They said they'd sell me to a man for money, but I escaped. I've been walking for days." Amaka knelt and wrapped her arms around the girl. Chica sobbed uncontrollably. "I have no one," she cried. "They said I was cursed, just like my mother. She died from childbirth. I've been on the street since I was 9, but one woman, a market woman in Ojelikba, she said, 'Find Amaka, the woman who helps girls like you.' That's all she said. That's how I found you." Tears filled Amaka's eyes. She gently pulled Chica up. "You're safe now." Chica nodded, but then whispered something that made Amaka freeze. "They told me. They said a woman used to buy girls like me. Her name was Mama Sandra, and she didn't work alone." Amaka felt the blood drain from her face. "What did you say?" Chica looked confused but continued. "I overheard them say she was part of a bigger group, that she used to take girls and send them to someone in another town. They said there are still people doing it, and they're angry you exposed her." Jonathan immediately locked the front door and pulled out his phone. "I'll call the police. This might be bigger than we thought." Amaka felt her legs weaken. She sat on the sofa still holding baby Adaza close. Her mind was spinning. So, Mama Sandra wasn't working alone? Was Adana's death part of something deeper? Her past wasn't just knocking. It had broken back in. Later that evening, detectives came to the house. Chica gave a detailed statement. What she revealed shook them all. There was a network, a ring of women, mostly older ones, who posed as nannies and midwives. Their real job? Trafficking girls from poor communities. Mama Sandra had been a key player, but someone else, known only as the matron, was in charge. And the last known location of the matron was in Imo State. The detectives made a promise to dig deeper. Amaka looked down at Chica and saw her younger self. Abandoned, betrayed, hurt, but now protected. "I want her to stay with us," Amaka said to Jonathan. He nodded. "Then she stays." That night, Amaka held her babies tightly, but sleep didn't come. She stared at the ceiling, her mind racing. If this network was still active, if there were still girls like Chica being trafficked, she couldn't stay silent. This was more than revenge now, more than healing. This was war. The next morning, Amaka held a press conference. Standing before reporters and flashing cameras, she spoke from her heart. "There's a system that continues to fail our girls. I was once thrown away by my own stepmother, sold to a stranger, left to rot. I survived because God sent an angel to me who disguised as a homeless man. But many like me don't. They were not that lucky. This must end." She announced the launch of a new arm of her foundation, the Adana Rescue Initiative, dedicated to rescuing girls trapped in domestic slavery, fake nanny rings, and child trafficking networks across the country. The crowd applauded, but behind the noise, Amaka saw something else. A man in the crowd, middle-aged, dressed in a clean agbada. He wasn't clapping, he was staring straight at her, unmoving and smiling. And when the crowd began to disperse, he vanished. Jonathan noticed too. "Did you see him?" Amaka nodded. "Yes, and I don't think that was a journalist." She had stared into the eyes of many enemies, but this one was different. Something about that man's stare sent chills down her spine. As the week went on, Amaka began receiving threats. First, an anonymous letter slipped under the gate. "You should have stayed quiet. You were warned." Then, a car followed Jonathan home from work, only to disappear when security tried to approach. One night, they woke up to the smell of burning. Someone had tried to set fire to the front gate. The message was clear. They were being watched. But Amaka wasn't a scared girl anymore. She called an emergency meeting with her foundation's legal and security teams. They hired top private security for protection, tapped into federal law enforcement, and Amaka gave one final order. We expose everything. We take this all the way to the top. She knew the danger, but she also knew that this was what she was born to do. From a child once thrown away like trash, to a mother who lost her child to poison, to the voice of hundreds of voiceless girls across the country. This wasn't just Amaka's fight anymore, this was Nigeria's reckoning, and as she stared into the mirror that night, wearing a t-shirt with her mother's name across the front, Adana, she whispered to herself, "If I die fighting this, so be it, but they will remember me." Suddenly, her phone buzzed, an unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. A deep, cold voice spoke. "You want to save these girls. You should start by saving yourself." The line went dead. Amaka dropped the phone. Jonathan rushed in. "What happened?" She looked at him, her face pale. "They know where I am." Amaka didn't sleep that night. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the phone in her hand. "You should start by saving yourself." The words echoed over and over again. Jonathan paced the room, concern etched deep into his face. "We need to get you out of the city for a while, just until the investigation team finishes." "No," Amaka interrupted firmly, her voice surprisingly steady. "If I leave now, I'll be running. That's what they want." Jonathan knelt in front of her, placing his hands gently on hers. "But we have twins now. We have Chika. Think about them." "I am," she said softly, her eyes filling with tears. "That's why I must stay. Because if I don't finish this, these people will keep stealing girls like me, killing babies like Adana. I need to make sure Adana's name lives on, not just in my home, but in the freedom of others." Jonathan couldn't argue with that. Amaka's resolve ignited a fire in the nation. News of the nanny trafficking network spread fast. NGOs, human rights activists, and local communities joined the campaign. Her story, once whispered in dark corners, now made national headlines. From abandoned child to national hero, the woman fighting Nigeria's silent war. The Adana Rescue Initiative gained massive support. Donations poured in, volunteers signed up, survivors came forward. Each story was heartbreaking. Each girl had a scar, and each one reminded Amaka of who she once was. But even as the world applauded, the danger grew. The man in the Agbada, his name was Chief Dominic Uwoala, a high-ranking politician and secret financier of the trafficking network, and the arrest of Mama Sandra and Amara had shaken his business. Amaka's rise was a direct threat to him. "She's stirring the nation," he growled to his associate. "If she's not silenced, our entire operation is finished." Within days, a new plan was hatched. One night, as Amaka returned from a televised interview, her convoy was ambushed. Gunshots shattered the silence of the motorway. Her lead security vehicle swerved off the road, flipping twice. Her car came to a screeching halt as armed men surrounded them. But Amaka had prepared for this. The doors of her SUV burst open. Special forces, already embedded with her convoy, returned fire. The shootout was brief but brutal. 2 assailants were killed. 1 was captured alive. Under interrogation, the man confessed everything. "They said she's exposing too much." Chief Dominic ordered the hit. The confession was enough. Within 72 hours, Chief Dominic was arrested. His luxury mansion was raided, his secret files, accounts, and victim list uncovered. And among the documents, a list of 27 girls, including Chika's name. The courtroom was packed again. Amaka sat beside Chika, who held her hand tightly. Chief Dominic stood in the dock, his arrogance deflated. The judge, with heavy words, passed the sentence. For human trafficking, attempted assassination, and conspiracy to commit murder, you are sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. The courtroom erupted. Amaka didn't smile. She closed her eyes and whispered a name. Adana. Outside the court, the crowd chanted her name, not just as a survivor, but a symbol. Amaka the fighter. Amaka the voice. Adana must live. Months later, The Adana Rescue Initiative opened its first shelter in eastern Nigeria, on the same land where Amaka's stepmother once banished her. It was named Adana Haven. The building was painted in vibrant colors with a plaque that read, "For every girl who was told she was worthless, you matter, you belong, your story is not over." Amaka stood at the front with Jonathan, their twins by her side, and Chika behind her, now strong, smiling, and enrolled in school. Mr. Andrew, her father, stood beside her, overcome with emotion. "You've done more than just survive," he said, wiping tears. "You've turned your pain into purpose." The press came again. Cameras flashed. One reporter asked, "Amaka, what's next for you?" She looked at her children. "My job is just beginning. Adana's name must not die, and not even the devil himself can bury it." 10 years later, Adana Haven had rescued over 3,000 girls across the country. Amaka became a national leader, invited to speak at the United Nations, where she shared her story, not as a victim, but as a mother who turned pain into power. Chika, now a young woman, became one of the directors of the foundation, dedicated to rescuing others like her. And the twins, Adana and Adaza, they grew up with their mother's spirit. In a viral video on her 10th birthday, young Adana stood in front of a camera and boldly said, "I was named after a woman who died for love, but my mother lived so that others like me don't have to suffer. My name is Adana, and I'm not going anywhere." I would like to read your view about this story. Where are you watching from? If you enjoy this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.